US sneezes and world catches the cold. Yes, we have heard about it. This is spoken in terms of how economic impacts are seen across the globe when anything starts and shows ripple effects from the United States. But this is something that we can commonly also understand when US mistakes, that is when the other countries have to pay for it, be it in form of economic loss or be it in form of lives. And that is exactly what we are seeing when the Indian crew in the tanker Settebello has been struck and unfortunately 3 crew members lost their lives. This is where we have to question that can civilian shipping remain safe when we are looking at extremely vulnerable global shipping lanes, and can it be safe for the civilians? Because this is not just about this particular time. This has something very similar in form of a mistake has also happened from US's end in 1988. Hello everyone, welcome to Vajiram and Ravi's Flash News. My name is Shubhangi Singh, and in today's context we are not just going to talk about that why these 3 innocent Indian sailors have been unfortunately struck by US's end, what was the action that India has taken, and most importantly, how US is repeating the mistakes that it has done in the past. So when we are looking at the present situation, what we are seeing is that US carried out strikes on not just one, rather 3 ships in the Gulf this week. Now the problem here that we as a country need to note here is that all of these 3 ships had Indian crew on board. And unfortunately, what we saw that 3 Indian sailors have been killed in a US military strike which happened on the tanker Settebello. Now the problem here is definitely that the lives have been taken, but in the bigger picture when you see, US did not carry out this strike in full understanding. They clearly mentioned that it was being accused that it is creating a blockade and it is violating the blockade on Iranian ports. But Settebello, this particular tanker, had already told that there is no affiliation whatsoever with Iran or Iranian oil. Even then, when US did not get the clarification as many times it wanted, this particular tanker was struck. It was just a matter of chance and luck that we have to believe that the other 21 crew members were saved by the Oman Navy. And we also have to be thankful that the other 2 ships were also rescued previously. So this clearly shows that when we are calling US a strategic partner, when we are looking at US as a friend, US might not be considering or giving us the extended hand in that very manner. Now that we have understood what exactly has happened, now let us move to understand that how India has replied back to it. India has gone ahead and strongly condemned and said that lethal action, especially against commercial shipping, is not justified. India has gone ahead and summoned US chargé d'affaires twice and lodged a very strong protest and against all of this. But all of this not only raises question on India-US relations, but it also raises multiple important questions, such as what happened to the international maritime security? What will happen because of what is unfolding, especially in Gulf? Where is the Gulf geopolitics heading? And most importantly, who will be responsible for the protection of overseas Indians? Because as of now, these are the ones who might be bearing the brunt of what Donald Trump started. Now, in order to get some answers to the questions that I just mentioned, first we need to understand that what exactly is going on. We already know that how US, Iran and also Israel are in a war situation. Now, US-Iran deal is something that has been on table for a very long time, that can be finalized and probably the war can come to an end. But what exactly is happening in this very important global choke point, that is Strait of Hormuz? If you can see the given map, you will see that only 4 choke points account for more than half of the global trade. That means if you look at 50% of just global trade, I'm not talking about even oil, it is just through Panama Canal, Suez Canal and Bab el Mandeb Strait, and then we have Strait of Hormuz and Strait of Malacca. Now, in this, we get to understand that this Strait of Hormuz is a main artery of Gulf, responsible for more than 20% of global oil trade, responsible for more than one-fourth of the natural gas and more. This is where the Strait of Hormuz became a very important economic tool in the hands of not just Iran but also US. Iran said we are not going to allow movement of any ship from this particular region, because if you can clearly see, Iran has a coast right here. Now US said if you won't allow that, then we will also not allow the permissions to the ships that you're giving. Now all the US military operations here are linked to enforcing the whole blockade that US wants to put on the Iranian linked trade that is being carried out. That means if Iran gives permission, US will not. So if any attack is being carried out, it is in the context that you are probably carrying what Iran has sent, and we will not allow that. Now in this very reference, these very ships have been attacked. They were not at all affiliated with anything to do with Iran, but US suspected. US did not get a clarification that it wanted, but who is US to ask for a clarification here? And that is why they have been struck. And this clearly points out to a bigger problem here, that when we are looking not just at overseas Indians but also the merchant vessels and the crew which is present there, they are in a region which is war-torn. It is a conflict-prone environment, and this makes their lives in danger. So how should India protect that? What are India's ways to step in? India has shown that yes, they would not accept this and they have condemned it, but can India really control all of this? Because in a conflict-prone environment, there are emerging risks such as misidentification of civilian vessels, which we have just seen, escalation between major global powers, threat to the global oil market, especially with context of Strait of Hormuz, and civilian casualties, which we are seeing. So clearly, when geopolitics collide, it is not just about how economic losses set in, it is something much more harmful, much more destructive, that civilian lives, the innocent lives, are also taken away. And this is something that is not new to US. US has done this previously. US has made the same mistake. You might get a flashback of 1988 here, where we saw the Iran Air Flight 655 was downed by Navy missile of US. And what US did? US expressed regret. Now let us also get into the backstory of this particular mistake of US. Now I'm talking about 1988. This is the time of Iran-Iraq war. We know Iran has never been US friends, especially after the Islamic Revolution of 1979. So in this, the ally for US is Iraq. US did display that it was neutral, but this very incident shows that it was not. Because on 3rd of July, United States ship USS Vincennes, which is a Navy ship that targeted Iran Air Flight 655. It was shot down. And why did that happen? Because US believed that this was a fighter jet of Iran. Rather, it was a civilian Airbus A300 carrying 290 people. None of them alive. And unfortunately, we also had 10 Indian nationals on the very same flight. So this clearly shows that US does what it wants. US has done previously. US might be mistaken. US might not understand. But US will not take consideration of what civilian casualty it can cause. And the current deaths of the Indian sailors that has happened, this has revived what had happened back in 1988. India not part of this war. Indian civilians, Indian overseas citizens not part of this war. But they are bearing the brunt. They will be haunted by the death of their relatives. They will be haunted by the death of their family, and for so long. So India might demand strong accountability, but the questions remain unanswered. And India needs to be prepared for the implications that lie in front of it. Especially given the timing, which is very peculiar if you look at it. Because in the coming days, our Prime Minister is expected to meet President Donald Trump. Biggest G7 leadership summit is happening. Do you think some answers will be sought there? Do you think it is important to hold US also more accountable to this, because we are far away from the war region, but we are tied up to it, where we are seeing economic impacts, higher shipping cost, higher costs for crude oil, risk to energy imports, imported inflation, increased packaging prices, increased food prices. That means we will be bearing the brunt of imported inflation. We have humanitarian impacts. We are worried for the lives of the seafarers present in that conflict prone environment. We have a huge Indian diaspora present in West Asia. And then, after all these impacts, India holding ties with Gulf countries, Iran, US, and also Israel puts us in a very peculiar position. So, what happens next needs to be seen, needs to be monitored so as to ensure that hopefully the next time US is mistakenly seeing a civilian ship, they are not targeted. What are your thoughts on this? Let me know in the comment section. I'll be leaving you here with the prelims practice question. Let me know the answer to this in the comment section. I'll be waiting for your answers. Thank you so much.